Welcome everybody. My presentation is going to be a little bit different in that being in the School of Education, we have two responsibilities. We use blended learning and technology in our teaching, but we also have to model and teach our students how to use it in their future teaching. Now, my background is that I got very interested in iPads in particular when they first came out. In fact, when I finished my PhD a few years ago, I bought myself my first iPad as a reward. And as soon as I got that iPad into my hands, I thought, wow, this is going to be a great tool for teaching and learning. And so after that, I actually started doing some research in primary schools with teachers, looking at how they used iPads to teach mathematics, because that's what I lecture in, primary mathematics pedagogy. So what I'm going to talk to you today is really about the pedagogical considerations when using any type of technology, but iPads in particular. In my course, my students don't have iPads yet because it's a postgraduate course, but they are getting them. It doesn't mean that I can't teach them about iPads, because schools are buying lots and lots of iPads. So lots of money is being spent. So a couple of things we need to consider. First of all is the learners. Now this applies to my students, but also to everybody here if you're teaching with technology. And I always show this video because I think it helps us to think about the learners in our classrooms, in our lecture theatres, in our tutorial rooms. So we'll just spend a minute engaging with this little one.
What's that? Yeah.
Okay, so we get the idea. That child is not even a year old, and that child is able to manipulate an iPad, get into the Angry Birds app, which I admire, and can actually work out how to flick the birds so that, you know, cause and effect type of thing. That child is not a year old. So you can imagine, for my students, they have to think about what would happen in 5 years when that child goes to school, and what is that child's capabilities in terms of technology and the way they think and the way they need to be engaged, let alone by the time they get to university. You know, they're different learners to the learners that are sitting in front of us right now. So those are the things that we need to start considering. We also need to consider why we're actually using technology, why we're using blended learning. Is it to engage the students? Is it to enhance teaching and learning? My PhD work was on student engagement, so what I learnt about students in schools applies to students at university as well. And there are three components that we need to consider in terms of engagement. We need to ensure that our students are cognitively engaged. So whatever they're doing, we're allowing them to think really hard about what they're doing. They also need to be actively participating, which is really difficult in lecture theatres, for example. They need to be involved in group discussions, practical, relevant activities, and they need to be affectively engaged. So they actually need to see the value of what they're learning, not just in that moment, but once they get outside the classroom, or once they finish their degree, they need to actually value what they're learning now. And I think a lot of our students in our courses only see value in terms of them being able to pass an assignment and get through the unit, whereas we want them to see the value in the big picture of things. In my teaching, I need students and children to see the value of mathematics that they learn in schools, for example, and that they can see themselves as users of mathematics later in life. When these three things come together, that's when we actually have substantive engagement. So in terms of technology, we need to be using the technology in a way that promotes affective, operative and cognitive engagement so that they are deeply, deeply engaged in the content that we're teaching. So back to technology. For every bit of technology that we use, we need to consider the affordances of that technology, so what the capabilities are in terms of the particular content we need to teach, but also the constraints. When does that technology not enhance what we want students to learn or the way that we're teaching? That's particularly important because I know in schools, teachers get dumped with a lot of new technologies and think because it's given to them, they must use it for everything, regardless of quality. Okay, and it happened years ago when interactive whiteboards came into schools. Teachers were using them all over the place, but most of it was poor practice. Likewise with iPads and mathematics as an example. Teachers are just downloading games and things and thinking, yay, that's really, really great, my students are engaged. I'm using the iPad, so my principal's going to walk past my classroom and think I'm doing a great job. Not the case. So this is something that was written by researchers in mathematics education, but I think it's actually appropriate for all educators, and that's understanding the role that technology plays in our practice. So the first role they describe is technology as master. So that's where I'm subservient to the technology, and it's limited by my own individual knowledge. So that, for example, is using the iPad to play a game or just to read a PDF document, for example. So technology is the master. I'm using it because it's there, because I have to, but I'm not doing anything exciting with it. The second role is technology as servant. I'm still not really adapting my teaching practices when technology is used as servant. Then we have technology as partner, and we're starting to see a lot of these really good practices now, where you have an affinity with the technology, and you're starting to share power and control with the students. And in Jackie's last presentation, you could see that happening with those blogs and everything else. The control is actually being let go by the person in front of the classroom because of the technology. And the fourth role is technology as extension of self. And I think that is the most powerful use of the technology, when it's a natural part of what you do. It's not taking over. I talk to teachers about technology ruling pedagogy, where it should be the other way around. Pedagogy should be driving the use of technology. Very, very important. Okay, one of my favourite models related to technology is the SAMR model. How many of you have seen this? Oh, just this side of the room. Okay. I love it because it's very clear and simple. There are other models and frameworks that go deeper into the theory, but I think for practitioners, this is a very useful frame to begin planning. And I'll give you an example of each of these levels related to primary mathematics, because you've all been to school and you've all learnt maths, right? So you'll get what I'm talking about. Okay, so if we start at the bottom level, substitution, we're allowing the technology, or using the technology in a way that doesn't give any functional improvement. So in a mathematics scenario, it could be a worksheet type thing. It could be a game where a child has to answer a series of maths questions. It's colourful, it's electronic, you get to use your finger to swipe, but there's no functional improvement. If we move up to the augmentation level, there is some improvement. And it could be that same game that delivers instant feedback. You can't get that on a worksheet or a textbook. Of course, there's always the back of book for the secondary students. Remember, Bob, back of book? Okay, so augmentation gives you immediate feedback, which is quite powerful. If we move it up a notch, we have modification. So we're starting to see the design of different types of tasks. With a maths task, it could be that the children are starting to record verbal reflections using their iPads, which they couldn't before. So in a kindergarten class, for example, 5-year-olds find it very difficult to write, but they could actually just video record a really strong reflection about their learning using the iPad. And then at the redefinition level, we're implementing tasks that were previously inconceivable. So for example, at a maths level, we could have children out in the environment photographing 2D shapes, coming back, drawing over them, recording their voice, and talking about properties of those 2D shapes. So looking at lines and angles and things like that. We couldn't do that without that technology. And the beauty of iPads is that they are mobile. So they're offering something completely different in classrooms today. What I'm concerned about and what I have seen in practice is a level below SAMR, where the technology actually takes away from the teaching and learning. And it can happen at this level, or it can happen in a school. I can give you an example of where it happened to me. At the beginning of this semester, I was really excited. I thought I would try a student response system in my lecture. I spent a long time preparing some really nice things. I paid money to have access because I had a large cohort. And first lecture, the first thing I asked my students to do was to, write in one word their feeling about mathematics, because often my students are very anxious about maths. They're really, really scared. And their responses were to produce a word cloud. Okay? I overestimated my cohort, who I hadn't met before, in terms of their maturity. They were postgraduate, and 2 or 3 people typed in inappropriate things. It was awful. It was really uncomfortable, and I had to address that. I didn't notice that at the time because the majority did the right thing, and so the bigger words were sensible words. But there was some giggling, and when I went back to have a look at the recorded lecture and to have a look at the word cloud, I noticed straight away some inappropriate language and had to address that to the cohort immediately. And I gave them a very strong message about it, but to me that actually took away from the learning. And then I realised that the things that I do in my lectures are interactive enough anyway. I'm already engaging them operatively because we do lots of things in lecture theatres anyway. I get them up, I get them moving, I get them talking, I get them doing maths. So I don't need that. That actually took away from the teaching and learning. And in that case, it was a distraction. And I've seen lots of examples in real classrooms where that happens, where we're just using it because, but it actually is a negative, not a positive. I found this on Twitter this week, and I thought it was really, really nice. So we can look at SAMR as just, at the lowest level, a cup of coffee. We can improve it a little bit by making it a latte. We want to get really exciting, we could make it a caramel macchiato, and then redefining it into pumpkin spice. I thought that was really cute, so I had to put that in there. Okay, I want to show you an example of what I took out of the last blended learning forum. Somebody presented on Aurasma, the augmented reality app, and it blew my mind. I walked away thinking, how can I use this in my teaching? How can I use it? I need to use it. I went home, I played around with it, and I thought, I must use this, but I don't want to use it if it's just silliness. I have an issue with those QR codes. A lot of people are using them in education, and I've struggled to see the benefit of those QR codes in terms of, are they enhancing teaching and learning, or are they just, getting kids using technology for the sake of it? So I worried about Aurasma, whether I could actually do this well. One of the tasks in my course is a mathematics trail. So a mathematics trail is where you have a series of photographs in context out of the classroom and some open-ended maths tasks. So my students have to design one as an assignment, and to prepare them, I have a maths trail at Bankstown campus. So this is one of the photographs from my Bankstown campus maths trail. It's the chessboard outside. And these are primary maths questions, so they're not very hard. So the first one, locate the chessboard on the campus map. What are the coordinates? Use words to describe the position. Estimate the following measurements. How many squares can you see in the chessboard? That's not that easy. You have to do a bit of thinking there. And then an extension, design a simple game using coordinates. So what I thought about this maths trail and Aurasma was that if I could actually attach something to those photographs, the students could then, when they've done the maths trail, go back into the classroom and continue their work and do some extension work. So this is my idea, and I haven't done it yet, but I will, because it's in there and it can't get out till I do it, is I'm going to either go back to the site and video the surrounding area so that when my students or school students are back in their classroom context, they can revisit. Or, depending on the maths questions, I can actually link a YouTube clip explaining the maths concepts, or a Khan Academy clip explaining the maths concept, or me asking them reflection questions about those original questions. Does that make sense? So I'm actually extending the task and deepening it using Orasma. I think that's really cool, and I can't wait to do it. I've got a couple of minutes and I've got some more things to show you. I put a whole lot of stuff in this PowerPoint just in case I had time. What I'm thinking about at the moment is aligning these two ideas. So the roles that I spoke about at first, and I'm wondering whether there is any alignment between the SAMR framework and those roles. And I kind of sense that there is some alignment in that at the lowest level, when we're just using it as substitution, technology is taking charge and is the master. And at this level, where we're actually using it really naturally, and it's just part of what we do, and we're starting to use it creatively, these two align as well. But I think there's also still some movement in there, and that's what I'm just playing around with in my head at the moment. Whoops. Okay. In terms of when we're planning for our teaching, I think it's really important that we consider very carefully what concepts and skills we want our students to learn or master before we actually integrate any technology. And then we need to think, what are the available technologies and what are their affordances that are best suited to specific concepts and skills. So with my students, I give the example of fractions. Is there a technology that can be used to teach fractions, or is it better that I use concrete materials and hands-on stuff? Really, really important. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all with technology. There are many, many considerations. I think to help my students, I've got a document that's about 30 pages long where I actually look at a whole lot of iPad apps, and I've ranked them and rated them and written about them. And I won't show it to you, but one day it will be an e-book. I've just got to get my head around e-books. And I think there's a presentation on e-books today. But yeah, that's the sort of things I'm doing to help my students. One of my favourite things is to use Temple Run. Do you know Temple Run? If you don't download it on your iPhone, you could lose hours. Okay, I think I lost a whole January in Temple Run. But what I'm doing is getting my students to consider using non-mathematical apps to generate engagement. So children play a game of Temple Run, they generate a score, they generate a distance, and I've had some random ideas, maths ideas, just from using that Temple Run. It's just a creative way of doing it. But when I show this to teachers, they go, oh wow, I've got to download Temple Run. And in lectures, I actually get students to play Temple Run, and we play around with the maths. And it's really fun because they really enjoy it. So I think I'm going to finish there because I've run out of time.